Hello, Virgo. Here's your weekly horoscope for February 28th to March 6th. Well, I believe that for the last number of weeks, I've been talking about work for you guys, how much there's extra work, there's overtime work, work. Well, your sign loves to work, but even you get a little worn out. And I'm a little concerned this week that that's what's happening. There is a sun in Pisces opposite your sun sign of Virgo, but it is squaring the moon's nodes from Wednesday on. So the last half of the week might be a little extra challenging for you to keep your spirits up. The sun represents yourself, and in this difficult aspect, I'm concerned that it's bringing up some issues from the past. Now, when we have emergency situations, it's often Virgo that steps up to take care of the rest of us. Many Virgos work in essential services, and a lot of you guys have been taking good care of the rest of the world during this pandemic. But you do sometimes tend to work hard until you drop. That's not a good way to be. You should try to find better balance on that. But you do normally meet your responsibilities, and if you've been asked to work overtime, you do. My concern this week is there's a little bit of PTSD perhaps showing up in that it may not necessarily be any new stress coming your way, but previous stress is catching up with you, and you may be feeling a bit down, depressed, or overwhelmed this week. If that's the case, all I can suggest you do is take the time off work if you can and find ways that you can pamper yourself or exercise a little bit more in the way of self-care. Now, there is also Venus in Pisces, which is generally a nice place for Venus to be. Astrologers say it is elevated there, meaning it has its best expression in the sign of Pisces. And it's also making a wonderful aspect sextiling Uranus from Monday to Thursday this week. And what I like about that aspect is it encourages us to have fun, and fun in unusual ways. One of the things I like about Virgo is their dry wit. Sometimes it's sarcastic, and sometimes it's a little bit cutting, but it is almost always quick. And the only thing we don't like is when you do the double entendres. But other than that, Virgo has a great sense of humor, and Venus in Pisces has you probably be a little bit more fun-loving, and that's good this week. So don't forget your good sense of humor to help yourself feel better this week. With Mars in the very last few degrees of Taurus, it will move into Gemini on Thursday. But in the first few days of this week, it is still trining the planet Pluto in Capricorn, which that aspect should be really good for Virgos, or should have been good last week as well, at least in helping you establish firmer foundations at work, better relationships. If you started any new duties or new procedures, that would have been a good time to do it last week, or even into the first few days of this week as well. But if you can, I might recommend that you can try to get some time off, maybe by the mid of the week. I am concerned, Virgo, that you might be working too hard. Now, one thing that helps is we have Mercury conjunct Jupiter in Aquarius this week. For your sign, that puts the Mercury-Jupiter conjunction in a workhouse. So I believe I've suggested to Virgos before that there was a raise or a bonus coming. Well, great. Maybe it's this week while Mercury is conjunct Jupiter. You tend to not spend money foolishly. If anything, you spend money to help other people, but you can be quite the penny pincher when you need to be. But you know what? This week with Mercury conjunct Jupiter, you may be inclined to spend some money on yourself or to make a giant purchase, like if you need a new appliance or you've been looking even to move to a new home or upgrade your apartment. Great. That could be what's going on this week. I can probably safely say that most any large purchase you make this week, Virgo, probably will be of big benefit to you. It also might involve you doing purchasing at work. If that is, a lot of Virgos end up handling money in their work, even doesn't matter what they're doing, but the money part of it seems to be something that may be a part of their job. In that case, your employers may be charging you to make some huge purchases, and this is the week to do it. The only warning I have about Mercury conjunct Jupiter, and yes, even for Virgo, is sometimes we spend too much money. Sometimes we really blow our budget because, well, I'll give you one reason why. Virgo sometimes can get very down on themselves. Sometimes they feel they're not good enough or they're not whatever enough. And usually it's not an accurate perspective, but it's the nature of your sign. Sometimes people spend large amounts of money to make themselves feel better. So if you are the type of person that would blow extra money on silly purchases, keep in mind that this week you might be more inclined to do that. So watch your spending. As I usually suggest for any sign with this kind of an aspect, spend money only that you have. If you are buying a home, and of course that involves a mortgage, or if you have to have a car and you have to get a loan, that's okay. You'll probably get it this week. But again, just be careful not to spend money foolishly, and do not spend money you do not have. And then everything should go well. With Pluto continuing on in Capricorn, it's finishing its trine to Mars on Tuesday, but it's still in a good place in your horoscope. So this whole year might be a good time that you are looking to establish or reestablish some boundaries and a firmer ground on which to build your life. As I said, with the Mars-Pluto trine, that might have been a good time to change a major part of your life, a job, a home, a relationship, whatever. But it would have been a good time for it last week and in the first few days of this week as well. Once Mars goes into Gemini on Thursday, it can get a little bit tricky, because for Virgo, that does put Mars up in your 10th house of work, and Mars is a planet of conflict, and in the sign of Gemini, Mars in Gemini is a little bit too quick to fight. It's a great aspect, it's a great planetary placement to have if you want to be a boxer or an athlete, or if you're doing manufacturing work, especially with your hands, because Mars in Gemini is good for that, but not necessarily so good for relationships, because Mars in Gemini can be a little bit too flippant, too sarcastic, too mouthy, and sometimes create problems where none need to exist. And Virgo is a little inclined to do that at times too. So I'm a little concerned that you might be making a bit of a mess in some area of your life this week once Mars goes into Gemini, and it's going to carry there for about 30-40 days. So I'm going to talk to you about that probably again next week, Virgo. But do know that at least with Mars in Gemini, it does help perhaps give you a lot more drive and energy, but there might be also the potential for you to want to take shortcuts or to just drive over top of people to get to where you want to go. And that probably will not fly, so you could create some confrontations that, again, aren't necessary. With Neptune in Pisces, it's not really aspecting anything but the moon with a few different aspects off and on. Perhaps the worst for you, well, we had a full moon in Virgo on Saturday, and for some Virgos that would have been great. Others, perhaps it would have been just a little too much in the way of emotion and you might have felt overwhelmed. But as well, this coming weekend, when the moon will be in Sagittarius from Thursday to Saturday, it again may overblow your emotions, and you might have some conflicts with people that, well, may or may not be necessary. But at least while the moon is in Scorpio from Tuesday to Thursday, that might be a better time to discuss relationship issues and to talk about the deeper emotional issues that might need to be brought out to be resolved. Otherwise, with Neptune in Pisces, when it trines the moon in Scorpio, basically from Wednesday on to about Thursday, that's won't be the whole time, but in that time, depending on your horoscope, that's not a bad time to perhaps think about doing some self-care, some personal growth, meditation, speak to a counselor, a spiritual advisor, or whatever, therapist even. Virgo, you tend to not always be able to talk about what's bothering you, or sometimes you say too much, but without really getting to the heart of the matter. So communication this week with this conjunction to Jupiter, it's probably a good placement for you to just talk about things and to try to resolve any issues and relationships and such. In general, I hope that this week will prove to be a lot better of a week for a lot of people, and that includes you, Virgo. So good luck and have a great week ahead.